Hi everyone! This video is about infant EEG data quality, and today we will discuss how do we know the data is good. And I received this question from many of my students while they were sitting behind the EEG computer looking at the live EEG, and sometimes you see noise happening or artifacts, and the question was, when do we interfere? Because when testing a baby, there's also always this kind of balance between keeping the baby happy and having good quality EEG data. And this can be a real challenge to have that balance the right way. And that's why this question is really important, and you really need to know what data is good or good enough. And that can also change in different situations. When you have a very grumpy, fuzzy baby, you can strive for lower quality because you don't want to lose the baby completely and then end up with no data. So you always have to kind of like look at, okay, this baby can take a little bit more fidgeting with gel and electrodes, and then I can achieve a little bit better data. But you really have to be careful and keep an eye on the baby and how much the baby can take. So it's really important to know what data is fixable offline, because there are a lot of tricks that can help you to achieve better data. There's filtering, there's some artifact rejection that you can use, and it's just really good to know that sometimes data can look a lot better after pre-processing. And as a student, but also as a developmental neuroscientist, you have to kind of know what data is fixable and what data is not fixable. So we will discuss this today. Although this video is not intended to show you how to exactly fix the data, it will mostly focus on what data is fixable. I will still discuss a little bit about filtering, because this is one of the things that is used most to kind of fix data afterwards. So we'll discuss that briefly, and then we go into several artifacts and noise that you can see in EEG data, and I will discuss if it's fixable or not fixable. And then probably I will make a video later to show you more about how to fix data. Okay, so a little bit about filtering. So filtering is removing spurious electrical activity that is not brain activity. So brain activity is considered to be in a specific frequency from about 1 Hertz to 30 Hertz. Obviously there's discussion about this, but this is what most people would say is brain activity. And then everything lower, so lower than 1 Hertz, would be, for instance, like head movement, swaying, swinging, breathing, slow breathing. Sometimes you can see that in the EEG. And that's all very low frequency and looks like drifting of your signal. And then we have the really high frequency, which you can see as that really looks like noise, really fast frequencies. And that's usually muscle activity that you can see in the data. So for instance, here you see original signal with probably a muscle artifact of very fast activity, electrical activity, and then you see with filtering you can decide what kind of frequencies you want to filter out and what kind of frequencies you want to keep. As you can see here, a filter was used to remove higher frequency electrical activity, and you can see that this is a really nice example of successful filtering where the high frequency was filtered out and the data looks a lot better. Okay, so let's go into some examples. The first one I talked about a little bit already is muscle activity. So muscle activity is a lot faster, so a higher frequency electrical activity than brain activity. So it looks kind of like fast. Usually it's a pretty big amplitude. And is it fixable? Yes, it is. So like we just saw, this is usually just, you can just filter it out. Obviously you want data to be as perfect as possible, but like we discussed, with babies this is sometimes not possible. So it's okay to sometimes decide to keep some artifacts in there, some muscle activity, some noise in high frequencies, because this can be filtered out. So if you have to prioritize a happy baby, just let it go and filter it out later. Then what you can also see sometimes is some line noise. So line noise is noise that you can see in a specific frequency that is from the electrical current or some electrical, for instance, the current in the air that you can kind of see in the signal. So it's a specific frequency. In Europe, it's actually 50 hertz, and in the US, it's 60 hertz. It's really easy to filter out because you can exactly say with bandpass filtering, you can say just get rid of this 50 hertz or 60 hertz. So you have to know what kind of currency is around you, if it's 50 or 60, and then just remove that whole frequency. So is this fixable? It is. Then eye movements. So when you haven't seen these before, the first response might be like, oh my God, what is that? The data, that's a really strange artifact. What's wrong with my data? These frontal electrodes are acting really weird. But this is actually a very typical eye movement. And this is an eye movement from left to right and from right to left. It looks exactly like this, where you see the kind of like blocks in your EEG. And this is totally fixable with independent component analysis. So some people use the eye electrodes to capture this. They stick it around here and around here. And then those eye electrodes measure the eye movements and the eye blinks. And then you can remove it with the help of these electrodes. But you don't necessarily need these electrodes, and I have published papers where I just used ICA component analysis and just removed the eye movement component, and I didn't need extra electrodes, and it worked really well. So even if you don't have those extra eye electrodes, you can still remove this pretty well from your data. A good thing is that babies don't make a lot of eye blinks and eye movements. Probably you know, if you have encountered babies, they stare a lot. So not a lot of eye movements here, which is pretty helpful for the EEG. Then eye blinks. So the eye blinks look a little bit different than the eye movements. This is a really clear eye blink. Again, you see them on the frontal channels because the muscle activity is happening there. And with every blink, you see this this wave, tiny wave of activity. And again, this is very nicely fixable with ICA, and then you can remove it really nicely, even without the extra eye electrodes. Okay, and then sometimes you have some technical issues, like your electrode is at the end of its time, and you get strange spikes, or like here, just like voltage change, very rapid. That's usually a sign of an electrode getting broken or damaged. And this is also why you should do some testing. Maybe every couple of months, you have to test your electrodes depending on how much you use them. Because otherwise you can get these technical issues, and the problem with those is that they're not really fixable, because it doesn't have a pattern, so it can't be detected by independent component analysis. It can't be filtered out, so this is really the kind of artifact that you have to remove, which means that you cannot use that data. And then another one, which is a problem with babies sometimes, a lot of movement is also, again, it's not predictable, so it's really difficult to capture it. ICA, it's not like eye movements that have this specific component, this typical way that it looks, typical electrodes that it happens on. So movement is really hard to filter out, if not impossible, and therefore a lot of movement needs to be removed with artifact rejection, and it's not fixable. So if you have a baby that moves a lot, try to maybe have a break, try to maybe have some distractors, where the baby's attention is grabbed and the baby starts kind of like staring at your screen again. Try a different position, because movement, and babies move a lot, movement can be damaging to the quality of your EEG data. And again, you have to think about happy baby, happy data, but movement can be a real problem for your data quality. Okay, so those were the most common noise and artifacts that you can encounter, and I explained whether they're fixable and not. And I hope it was helpful. If you have any other questions, please just ask me. You can put them in the comments below, and I hope it was helpful, and see you next time. Bye.